Good morning, ladies. Got off to a little bit of a late start, but that's all right. We're all here now. So what I'd like everybody to start out to do while we warm up is a little bit of marching in place. And so as we march in place, I think it's much more important that we're driving length through the middle of our knee, length through the front of our hip. We don't want any tension or bend in our knees and hips. We want to be driving that length straight forward. So now we're going to add the arms into that action. Make sure you're pulling those toes up as you lift. I want the arms to be going forward, side, and up. And that action should be loose and fluid with those arms. Don't reach to your highest. Don't reach too much. Just get things moving a little bit this morning. So first off, guys, I want to tell you, I finally got to go shopping at Athleta in Reston yesterday. It was awesome. I've been missing it so much. I got these awesome warp knit tights with the cool cutouts. I got this Renew Racer back tank. And so I just want to pass on the message. Get in there, guys. You can try things on now. You can touch it. It's hard to tell those things when we're online, but it really is awesome. And if you do go in there between now and August 31st, just mention my name, the class that you took this morning, and they're going to give you an extra 20% off of any single item you purchase. So make this workout benefit you twice, in your body and in your wallet. Hi, Kaio. Yes, hello to my dog. Go ahead and go. All right, so what I want you to do now is let your legs come to a rest, and we're going to grab some weights here. And if you don't have any weights, don't worry about it. You can deal with no weights. Just use your body weight. So whatever weight you pick, whether it's going to be a kettlebell or a dumbbell, the main rule to this exercise is there's never space between your leg and the kettlebell. You're always letting the kettlebell remain in contact with your legs. So what I want is a normal squat position. I want you to drive your hips open and back as you go down, letting those kettlebells stay in contact with your leg while your knees push out wider than your pinky toes. We're really trying to open up the space in your pelvis. We're not trying to go forward, and we're not trying to go down as much as we're trying to go back and then drive length from the floor. So let's go for about 10 more of those. Feeling your shoulders staying away from your ears. If you have any bend in your elbows, let's straighten it out now. We want to pretend we're reaching towards the ground with our elbows, but we don't want to bend through our spine. Just feeling the hips open and spread as we go down and push away from the floor as we come up. Let's go 2 more. Beautiful. All right, so let's set those weights down. And the next thing we're going to do is going to be a little bit of an action just to get us moving to the side a little bit. And I want you to channel your inner speed skater here, okay? So you ever seen the speed skaters going down the ice, right? So I could use that. You could do that fast one if you feel like that's your level. But I like this as a warm-up too. We're just feeling there's a slight rotation of the hip as we go. We're stepping out to the side, and we're letting our body and our hips rotate around each other. Beautiful. Let's go for about 10 more seconds. Arms can kind of do whatever they want to here right now. I'm going to add something into them on the next couple sets, but I want to make sure right now we're just warming up nice and easy. Good. And let's rest here. And now we're going to do a little bit of work with our bands. And so for the bands, if you don't have one, you can still do this exercise without the band, okay? It's not absolutely necessary. But if you don't have one, I want you to pretend that you have one on, okay? So you're going to channel your inner, there's a band around my wrist, okay? So when we start, our elbows are facing towards the floor, our fingers are facing up towards the ceiling. And what I want you to do is just while your weight stays in the balls of your feet, we don't want to be back here on our heels, okay, guys? So make sure the weight's in the balls of your feet. And then what I want you to do is reach your elbows straight and keep your shoulders away from your ears and your ribs from popping up like that. We want to keep those ribs nice and anchored. So it's not, you may not reach as high as you think you can, But the important thing is that you get all the way straight to the elbows and you feel that your lats and your abs are connecting in, so that as you produce that upward action, they stay down and there's none of this when we're doing it, okay? So you should really feel this as an abdominal exercise just as much for your shoulders. So now rest for a second, because I guarantee you've been doing it a while. Your arms are a little tired. Shake them out. We're going to do one more set, so don't get rid of your band quite yet. But on this set, we're going to alternate between forward and upward. Same rule, you need to get your elbows to a straight position, but it's not always to the upward angle. It's forward and upward. The main thing to remember, let's go ahead and start, is that every time we come down, our elbows rest into our body. Every time we're reaching up or out, we're engaging those abdominals to stay anchored. If our arms are reaching forward, our shoulder blades need to be pulling away from it as they reach forward. We don't want our shoulder blades to follow it. Same thing as we go up, we want our shoulder blades to think they're trying to drive downward and backward to keep the correct muscles engaging in there. Let's give me 2 more. And let's go ahead and rest. You can set your band off to the side. All right, so next we're gonna do a little bit of balance and arms. So we're gonna be doing a lot of arm action. So if you want a little weight, if your arms are pretty strong and you've been doing this, then you can use a very small weight, 2s, 3s, nothing higher than a 3. 5 will be way too much. But if you wanna do it with just your body weight, if it's your first time, then stay with just your body weight. But let's go ahead and first we're gonna balance. So if you're not so great at balancing, then keep the other toe down on the ground just a little bit with very little weight on it. Imagine that toe is on the thinnest piece of ice you could ever imagine. Make sure that you don't fall through the ice on that back foot. And so as you're balancing on that front leg, on the straight leg, you're trying to lengthen out of your knee and you're trying to push that hip slightly in front of your ankles, just so you can feel that you're in the front of your foot rather than being behind and pinching in with your inner thigh. So now let's switch legs, and we're going to do a balance on the other leg. Same thing, no arms yet. If you've been doing this for a while and you're already doing your arms, guys, then please go for it. But we're doing our leg nice and long, hip nice and straight. If you can take that foot off the ground, make sure it lifts a little bit wide and there's no pinch trying to balance. I'd much rather have your foot on there than get any kind of pinch in your game. All right, so now let's go ahead and add the arms in when we switch to the other side. So now we're back on our starting leg. We've got our balance, whether the toe's down on the ice or not. And now let's work on a little bird fly action. And so we don't want our arms to be stiff. We want our abs and lats to be stiff. All those muscles that you just worked during that banded exercise should be working now to help you hold your balance. We want to really focus on the shoulders staying away from the ears and the arms being fluid and loose. And now let's switch legs, and now we're going to do bird flies front to back. So keeping those elbows leading the action of the loose and fluid arms through both positions, going backwards and forwards. Palms stay forward the whole time on this one. Use the balance on your standing leg and make sure your knees are slightly turned outward and there's never an inward pinch as you're holding balance. And let's go ahead and switch legs. So the next one we're going to do is, I call it canister roll. And so I want you to imagine that there's this big canister, almost like a drainage ditch, on either side of you. And you're trying to roll a circle with your arms around that outside perimeter of the canister while your ribs and your shoulders stay nice and anchored. We don't want to see any boob lift or shoulder shrug when we're doing this. And that's what makes it feel like it's an ab and a shoulder exercise. So let's go ahead and switch to the other foot. We're going to do our table cleaners next. And for the table cleaners, we're imagining that there's a little pad of end dust tablecloth cleaner here. And we're just trying to dust the table, keeping our shoulder and our abs as our main focus, and the arms being as loose and fluid through this movement of cleaning the table as they can be. Beautiful. No weight or pressure on the back foot, just everything pushing length through the leg and ribs and shoulders anchoring towards the floor. Let's go ahead and switch legs again. This time we're going to do a out the window. So imagine it's like a beautiful day, which it is right here, right on this porch, and you're driving down the road and your window's open of your car. You want to think that you're just trying to catch that wave of wind as you're going out the car. And I want you to imagine you're trying to go really high and then really low with that wind catch so that we're not getting lost in this range. We want to go nice and high, nice and low, and keep those ribs anchoring down and the shoulders down so that our abs and our lats are the main focus here. All right, so let's switch to the last leg change. And for this one, we're just gonna do little pulses. And so I want you to imagine that your fingers are dead, your elbows are dead, and you're just trying to flop them around as your abs stay tight, your hips stay straight, the back of your neck stays nice and long, and your chin slightly tucks, but not to jam it in there, just to kind of feel like a little bobblehead that's nice and tall through the back of the neck. 3, 2, and rest your arms down, roll your shoulders a little bit. Any tension in your arms, shake it off like you got water on your fingertips and you just want to get rid of it. Perfect. All right, so for our next one, actually, before you do that, grab a quick drink of water. Our next one is going to be a little bit more movement. So we're gonna want your band for this one. So in the last set of arm reaches with the band, we did them while you were standing up. This time we're gonna add a little bit of a squat into it. So if you have a lot of difficulty figuring out the squat and the band action, do a couple separate and then bring it back together. But with this action, the arms are gonna do the same thing. We're gonna alternate between up and out, or out and up. And as you're going out or up, your hips and your hands are always trying to go away from each other as you reach and then coming back up together at the top. So when we reach our hips back, our arms are going to reach forward, but our shoulder blades stay back away from our hands. And then we come up tall, pushing the hips away from the ground and rest. And now as we squat our hips back and our knees wide, we're going to reach our arms up overhead as our shoulders and ribs anchor down towards the floor. And then we're going to come back up as we push our hips away. I don't need you to hold this position for any length of time. You just go down and come back up. So let's go ahead and repeat. Reaching out, reaching up. I find that using an exhale at the bottom helps you check that your ribs aren't lifting up. It's a very strong tendency for people at the bottom to look up and lose that abdominal engagement. So we do want to remain upright, but we don't want to bend forward in our action. Let's give me one more in each position. And then you can go ahead and drop your bands off to the side. And for our next one, we're going to do a little bit of a jumping jack. So we're going to get our heart rate going a little bit more. Now, if you really like that speed skating thing, and instead of a jumping jack, you'd rather do a speed skating run, right? It doesn't matter. Either one works for me. Whatever comes easier to your body, whichever one you prefer to do works great, okay? So as long as we're leaving the ground a little bit. And if, let's say you can't get off the ground today, your knees, your ankles, something's bothering you, then you go back and do this one again, okay? Doesn't mean that you have to go into something that hurts or anything that bothers you. All right, so we're either going to be doing jumping jacks. So go ahead and start. Your jumping jacks, if you have a bent elbow, the elbow needs to be reaching towards the floor and the wall. If you have a straight arm, then it's the same thing. Reach towards the floor, reach towards the wall. We don't need to go all the way up into here. They usually pull you apart. If you're doing the speed skating one, then you're just working that action of pushing out to the side and then coming back to the center. Let's go for 5, 4, 3, 2, and rest. Perfect. All right, so as you bring your heart rate back down, what I want you to do is grab a quick drink of water if you need it, but we are going to be coming down to the floor. Whoa, watch out. We are going to be coming down to the floor. Sorry about that, little technical difficulty. When we come down to the floor, we just want to make sure that we're going to get into our shin box. So you can grab some water. You can grab whatever you need. Hopefully I kept you busy with your water and you didn't notice that I dropped the camera. So when we do the shin box, I want you to start with your knees bent, your butt stuck out, and your feet nice and cocked up. Meaning you're not pointing your toes away from you. Your toes are kind of pulled up towards your knee. And so from here, we're going to go ahead and bring the bottom leg forward, and we're going to let the top leg fall behind us. And so for some of you, you may feel like this is where you are, and that's perfectly fine. Please don't try and sit up, because you can see that would put a bad position on your back. What we're doing is just assessing. We're just trying to feel what the difference feels like. So as you're here, feel what that hip feels like. Feel how off to the side you feel, or feel how upright, or where you feel the jamminess or what feels tight. And now let's just compare that to the other side. So turn, face the other direction than what you just were. Knees are bent, butt stuck out, feet are cocked, knees are stacked. And slide that bottom leg forward as the top leg goes back. And again, just assess. If you're on your arm, that's perfectly fine. Please don't try and force it sitting up tall. You just want to feel where the opening between your pelvis allows you to get to. You never want to feel like you're tucked under and you're trying to sit up tall. That's not going to be anything that feels good, and I don't want you to attempt it. So now that we've assessed both sides of your shin box, we're going to go into our next exercise, which is the beast. And so for the beast, I want you, if you have a yoga block, let's use a yoga block. And if you are an old hat at this and you know exactly what we're getting ready to do, then I'm going to tell you can go ahead and get into a beast, and your first set begins now. If you've never done beast before and getting down onto your knees is not comfortable, I'm going to show you an alternate from a height of a chair or something like it. You can get into a plank, walk your knees forward, and then you want to bend them wide, and you want to stay loose in your toes. And the big message here, guys, imagine that my hands are still on that chair, is that my knees are loose and wide. We don't want anything like this. If the toes, ankles, and knees are pushing against it, relax them out and think about sticking your butt in the air. Any tucking under of your back is going to make this feel worse. So, all right, guys, those of you who are working that set, great job. Go ahead and sit back and rest for a second. If you didn't use your block on the first set, go ahead and grab it. If you're doing that alternate that I just showed, don't worry about the block. You just worry about trying to feel the cues that I say during this set, because they apply to you up there just as much as they apply to the person on the floor. So as you get into your plank, your beast position, your toes should be tucked under, no flat feet. So once you're there, place the block on your back, either in the 1, 2, or 3 position difficulty. And as you push through your shoulders and push your neck and your chin and your shoulder blades away from the ground, you're going to melt your legs wide and your toes loose. And we're just going to hold this position, and you can see if I turn slightly, or feel, if you can't see me, that your hips are slightly behind your knees and your butt crack is as open to the sky as it can be, while you're pushing your chest, your chin, and your shoulders away from the floor. Let's hold it for 5, 4, 3, 2, knees down, block off your back, and sit back into a comfortable position for you. Now, I use the super block a lot of the times because it's just so nice. It's a big old yoga block if you've never seen one before. You can find it at yogadirect.com. They are essential to resting or being able to sit on the floor in a comfortable position. But if you don't have one of those, or that's still, maybe your knees and hips are still a little too tough to get onto that, then you can sit into that shin box position like this. and at all possible, try to not be on your shoulders too much, because we really want your arms to take a break in between these beasts and these next couple exercises. So we're going to do a bird dog next, guys. Actually, I lied. Let's do one more beast. And the beast this time is to add a little challenge. So if it's your first time beasting, do exactly what you did on the last set, no progression. If you've been doing this a while, guys, then I want you to challenge yourself to the hardest thing you do well today in your beast, which may be crawling, which may be beast bird dogging, which may be hand taps, foot taps, anything that really gives you challenge but doesn't break your form apart. So let's go ahead and let's go into another set. So hands and knees directly underneath your shoulders and your hips to start. Even though we might slide a little bit back into, we might slide our hips a little bit further back when we're in the action, we don't want to preemptively start that way. So before we get going, make sure your toes are tucked under. Your shoulders, your neck, your chin, and your chest are pushed away from the floor without the block falling. Now lift off your knees nice and wide, letting your toes release from any tension, and then produce whatever your challenge is. If it's stationary, keep pushing that chin and chest away from the floor. If it's moving, keep doing the same thing, but thinking about alternate arm and leg, always moving together. That's the way we do this with minimal block jumping. And then let's go 5, 4, 3, 2, rest your knees down. Whew. And sit back into whatever position feels comfortable for you. Nice job, guys. So we have a bird dog coming up next. If you need a quick drink of water and it's handy, feel free to grab it. And for the bird dogs are like the most popular exercises for people to do wrong. So if you've never done a bird dog with me before, listen. You might want to watch the first time. And just remember, guys, I'm recording this onto Instagram TV. So if you don't catch everything, or if you need to go through something again, or if you just want to do the workout again, you can find it and you can access it after today's class. But when we're doing the bird dog, I want you to really feel how to do it correctly, and that might challenge what you've usually done. So if you have a yoga block, let's set it on your back, whatever position you feel like it's not going to topple over every 2 seconds. And what I want, same start. We want to push our chest, our shoulders, our chin, and our neck away from the floor. Then we want to keep our knees. Make sure your knees are pretty wide on your mat. We want like an A-frame position. If you look through your legs right now, it should look like the letter A. And what I want you to do is reach your arm and your leg in a long position, reaching through your heel, making a fist with the hand that's lifted, and pulling your shoulder away from that fist as you drive length through the middle of your knee to straighten your hip as straight as you can. Do not lift up as much as you're lengthening out. And now let's place your knee down nice and wide. Feel the block on your back and make sure there's not a lot of shift. And now as you transfer your weight onto the other knee, make sure that your body doesn't shift over onto that knee that stays on the ground. We really want to keep that middle position with our A. So let's go ahead and reach the other arm in a fist and the other heel long. And now pull the shoulder away from the fist. Reach the heel through the middle of the knee. Push your chin and your chest and your shoulder away from the floor. And keep holding it. It should feel really intense through your abs. If you don't feel your abs, you might have slid over to your knee, so push your body back towards your straight leg a little bit. And then let's go ahead and bend your knee down nice and wide. And let's take the block off your back and rest. Perfect. All right, so stay on the ground. Our next thing is going to be a little bit of a side bridge. And with the side bridge, I want you to be on your elbow, and with your elbow right underneath your shoulder, I want your hand pointing straight forward. We're gonna have our knees bent up, our butt stuck out. Make sure there's no like tucking around through your butt. We're really trying to stick it out. and our feet are cocked and stacked on top of each other. And so what we're going to start this exercise out by doing is first pushing our chest away from the ground. We cannot lift our hips up if we have not pushed out of our lats and abs to generate the support. So from here, drive your hips straight forward, not high, because up high just puts a kink in your back. We want them to be nice and low, and we want them to be driving forward. You can put your top hand on your hip, you can put it straight, you can put it to the ceiling, but make sure it's not touching the floor, because that's always going to make you rotate. And so now let's go ahead and push through your elbow to stick your butt out and rest down to the ground. And now let's go ahead and flip it to the other side. So we're going to warm up the other side with another set just like that. And so again, as you get over there, I'm going to try to get through this semi-quickly because I don't want you to waste a lot of energy on that elbow when we're not really up on it. So here, elbows under shoulder, push your chest away from your elbow and the floor, and then drive your hips straight forward and up. And as you're here, remember, not towards the ceiling, it's towards the wall in front of you. Your elbow and your shoulder are pushing everything up. That's where your height comes from. But your hips do not try and raise. They're always pushing straight forward. It's like if your knees are bent, you're reaching your bent knees away from your hips. And if you've never done that before, really feel through that. Ribs anchor down, push through the elbow, and reach those bent knees away from your hips. And you'll feel your butt come in, you'll feel your abs work a little harder. And now let's go ahead and push out of the elbow to set our butt back and rest. And so we're going to switch over to the other side, but before you get down onto that arm, we're going to do something on this one that requires a little bit of movement. If it's your first time, you've never done this one before, then perhaps you just stick with the stationary hold and just listen and watch and maybe try it again on Instagram TV later, right? But make sure that you're safe with your practice, and if you ever feel anything in your back, that does not mean that that's good. We never want anything that we're working out to feel stress in the back. That's a sign that it doesn't like it or it's working too hard. So just make sure we're always trying to envision the area of our low back to be relaxing and releasing during all of our exercise. We certainly don't want to feel that we're getting it stronger by working it out. Like that's not what we want. So let's go ahead and let's do our second set. And this time we're going to do a little bit of hinge rotation on your hip. And so just bear with me, listen through it, and if it doesn't make sense, you can try it another day. So, same setup. Before we lift our hips, we push our shoulder away from the ground. Drive your hips forward and up. Find that top position. I like to keep my hand on my hip on this one. And so now what you're going to do is you're going to push out of the elbow to stick your right butt cheek up towards the sky. And then you're going to swivel your hips back down into a square position to start to end up where we started. And now push your opening butt crack up towards the ceiling, and then push your hips forward back into that position. Every movement is generated by a push through the elbow to get the butt to open, and a push through the elbow to generate the hips forward. Let's give me one more. Push through the elbow to make your butt open towards the ceiling, and then push through the elbow to make your hips face the wall in front of you. And now let's go ahead and push through the elbow to hinge your hips back and rest. And let's flip it and try it on the other side. Nice job, guys. Halfway there. Hey, and just to give everybody a heads up as we're making this switch, I'm going to be doing a couple more hour-long classes, but then I think in a couple weeks we're going to be shortening them up to maybe 30-minute classes. That way it's not quite as much of a time investment, and you can kind of pick and choose from what you need. So let's go ahead and keep your bent elbow, hand out flat on the floor in front of you, butt out turned, and knees and ankles stacked, feet cocked. Hand on your hip, whether it's straight or long, doesn't matter to me yet. And let's go ahead and push your chest away from that elbow as you feel your abs and your lat engage. And now push your hips forward. And I just want to remind you that this stationary position, if you keep your knees bent and you drive those hips away and long with those bent knees, it really helps you feel your abs a little bit more right here. And so now let's push your butt from your elbow up towards the ceiling, and now push your hips straight forward so that they're facing the wall in front of you. Push your opening butt crack up towards the ceiling from the elbow, and then push from the elbow to circle your hips back forward towards the wall. Let's do 2 more. Drive out of that shoulder and elbow to push your butt up. Remember, your head should be in neutral, and then push out of the elbow to bring your hips back and forward. And now we've got one last one. Push out of the elbow, left butt cheek up towards the sky. Push out of the elbow, hips square to the wall in front of you. And now let's just go ahead and bend and come out of that. Nice job, guys. So what I'd like is for us to do a quick shin box here. We're going to go bridge. We're going to do a bridge set next, but let's just compare what your shin box felt like before. And if you can't remember how to get into it, we're from here. We slide the front leg, the bottom leg forward, the top leg back. We feel, we assess, we use our hand if necessary. And then let's go ahead and flip it on over to the other side. So we've got the bend in the bottom leg slides forward, the top leg goes back. Feel what that feels like. I can already feel a difference in mine. If you need your arm, still keep the arm. All right, so we're gonna do a bridge set next. And for the bridge set, we're gonna need a yoga block and a band. If you don't have either, it's fine. You can still get a good workout with it. But if you do have them, let's go ahead and grab those now. Now, for the bridge, if when you lay flat on the ground, your neck feels like this, then I need you to have a small, soft head support to get laying down onto the ground. After you start the set, you may be able to take it away, but I don't want any rigid head supports underneath your neck or your head during these exercises. Since we are going to be lifting our hips in the air, we don't want extra bend coming through our neck from whatever is underneath it. So we're going to start out with the block between your knees, and I'm going to let you choose whether you do it in this position, or the widest position. So either the narrowest, the middle, or the widest position is fine with me. And if you're not sure which one you like, then try them all and then just pick the one that you like the best. That feels like it helps you target your butt, your abs, and not get a lot of hamstring cramps, okay? So for this one, put the block wherever you want it, between your knees. And I want your heels to be slightly closer together than the block width. So they're not touching, but they're not wider than the block. And so now from here, I want to do a little experiment. I want you to make sure you can push your heels like you're sliding them long on the mat. You want to make sure that you have enough space between your heels and your butt that you can feel your body kind of slide upward when you push, and you feel that you've got good tension there without going into your hamstrings. If you get your hamstrings in there, then you need to move your feet slightly further away from your butt. And so from here, I want you to grab your mat, use your elbows as leverage into the ground, and now I want you to drive out of those heels and through the hips to raise those hips up in the air and keep the toes floating off the ground. And now we're just going to drop our hips down to the ground and then push through our heels to drive our hips back up again. We want to make sure that when we're going down, we're envisioning our hips opening, and as we go up, we're envisioning length through our pelvis. We're using our hands to kind of stretch the mat, so we're engaging those lats and using those abs a little bit more than if they were just laying there. Good, let's go for a few more down, pushing the heels, trying to stretch the mat while your hips drive up. Make sure your ribs stay anchored down. You're not just trying to go as high as you can. If you go as high as you can, you may feel it in your back. You want to feel this in your abs at the top, having to anchor as those hips try to push up. The abs are the ceiling that says that they can't go up any higher. Let's go 2 more. Shoulders away from the ears as those abs drive down towards the hip bones as you're coming up. And now let's go ahead and rest down. Take the block out from between your legs. And now we're going to do the band, or we're going to use the band. And so for the band, let's put it up above your knees on your thighs. If you don't have any of these great fabric bands, make sure you get some. Guys, those rubber bands just are so, first of all, they're going to break soon because you've probably had them for way too long. They lose their tension, as well as they roll all over the place and they don't feel great. So I would highly recommend getting a set of fabric bands because they're great. One set does a lot of different things. Don't just go with one. You want a set. So, all right, let's go ahead and go into our next bridge set. So for this one, your heels are going to be touching each other. Your toes are going to be lifted off the ground. Your hands are going to be in the same position on the mat, stretching it. And the same thing, make sure your heel position is close to what it was last time. And let's go ahead and push your bands a little wide. And when you're holding your bands wide, your butt's still on the ground, I want you to feel that the inner part of your heels are still touching. And I want you to see how far can you go apart with your knees without that center part of your heel coming apart. And now with that width remaining in your knees, now go up with your hips and then down with your hips. Keep the width in your legs as you produce this bridge, going up, ribs anchoring down, and then going down, hips staying open. And keep going with these. We're going to do about 5 or 6 more, making sure every time at the top you feel the stretch you're putting on the mat with your hands. You feel your ribs anchoring into the floor to make sure that you're not popping your boobs up in the air. Make sure that every time you go up, you're trying to stretch the mat with your heels on the ground so that you're not pulling yourself up with your hamstrings, but rather pushing yourself up with your glutes. Let's give me one more and then hold it at the top. So now in this holding position, you're going to go in and then back to that same wide position while you remain high in this bridge. Try not to let your hips drop at all as you keep going wide and narrow. You don't have to go as wide as you can. Just make sure that you're giving yourself some range to work through. Sometimes people don't let them come together enough. So just make sure that you're feeling the outside of your hips, but you're also anchoring with your abs and feeling those working. 3, 2, and let's go ahead and release your hips to the floor and go ahead and take your band off. And let's just see, do another little shin box here just as a little breaking point. If you need some water, you can kind of grab that while you're assessing your shin box, and just see, how did that make your shin box feel? Any looser? Any better? I think it actually might have helped me a little bit. Good. So grab a little drink of water if you need it. We are going to be on the floor again for this next set. We're going to do some abs next. So I need you to have, if you have them, we want a head support, which can be a yoga block or a small yoga block or a pillow. We want a yoga block. We'd like a band and a wedge. And again, guys, if you don't have all this stuff, it's okay. I'll talk you through everything without it. The substitute for a wedge might be a small hand towel or just a little bit of something to prop your hips with. And I think, a dumbbell or a kettlebell if it's handy. But again, I'll talk you through everything without it. So let's go ahead and get all those things and grab a drink of water and make your way to the floor. Awesome. All right, so for this set, what I'd like to start out with is a small head support, and that's it. We don't need our wedge yet. We don't need another yoga block. We just need the mat and a little head support. So I want one leg to rest out long and flat on the floor. Make sure that leg's not pinching across your body. Make sure it's loose and just long on the ground and feels relaxed. The other leg is going to stay bent on this one, but make sure again that leg doesn't pinch across. It always stays drifted and loose away from the midline. Okay, both legs are always loose from the midline, never pinching onto the midline. And so we're going to put your hands behind your head. I want your elbows in nice and close because the wider they are, the heavier they are. So let's keep them in nice and close. And I want you to imagine that there is a string on the back nodule of your skull. And I want you to imagine somebody on that back wall towards the ceiling is trying to pull your head from that back nodule off the ground. And now I want you to lift your shoulder blades off just a little bit as you really anchor your shoulders away from your ears and your ribs away from your face. And so as we're doing that, you should feel that the shoulder blades, the abs, that's what's holding you up here. Your neck should not be pulled forward. It should not be lifting the chin. If your chin is looking up, then it's going to pull tension into your neck. So always let your chin stay nice and dropped as you lengthen that nodule at the base of your skull up the wall behind you. And hold it for 5, 4, 3, 2, and rest down. And let's go ahead and switch legs. If you've been doing this for a while, guys, you don't have to rest down. You can go ahead and go back up. And same thing, hands behind the head, elbows in nice and close to your ears. Pull your shoulders away from your ears and your ribs away from your face to pull your shoulders off the ground. And now lengthen the nodule on the back of your skull up the wall behind you as you keep your knees loose from one another and you really feel those upper abs burning like crazy. If you feel it in your neck, drop your chin slightly and really lengthen the back of your neck. 3, 2, and rest down to the ground. Awesome. All right, so for our next one, we're going to do, our legs are going to stay at rest. So this is just a little bit of a range of motion finder. And if you've done this before and you'd like to go ahead and start into some alternating legs, that's okay. But I'd also like and challenge you to say, don't jump into what you think you know. Kind of set your range for the day and the next set that's about to come, because you're going to do it twice. So when you put your wrists in there, it's very much like what we did earlier in the class, where we were reaching up, we were reaching out, we were keeping the ribs and the shoulders anchored away from the ears. So we're going to do that same thing just to set the range of motion for the arms during these next 2 sets. So I want you to put your arms up towards the sky as your shoulder blades pull into the ground. I want you to put a little stretch on the band, and now bend your elbows down. Give me 5 more, just like that. As your stretching banded wrists reach away, your shoulders and ribs push into the floor. And then bend and release. As the hands reach away, the shoulders and the ribs push into the floor. And then we release and come back down. Now let's do 2 more. Try not to let the ribs and the lats release as you bring your elbows down and up. So it's a more intense action through the abs, but should not feel any more tense through the arms. And let's go ahead and rest your arms out of there for a second. We're going to do your up overhead in a second. We were just doing straight up to the ceiling. If you went into the up overhead ones on those guys, go to the ceiling on this next one, okay? So as we go into the next set, let's find our range of motion by going up and over. And like I said, if you just did that, then just go straight to the ceiling for this set. And let's go for 5. Elbows straightening out as your ribs and shoulders stay down. And then let the elbows bend and come back up. And let's go ahead and reach as the ribs and shoulders stay anchored down, finding the straightness in the elbows and feeling how far can you go, because on the next one, we're going to take the band off. Give me 1 more. On the next set, we're going to take the band off, and we're going to use that range of motion that you just set to make sure that you're not popping your ribs every time your arms go up and over. So it's really important that we use those upper abs to stabilize from any boob lifting off the floor. All right, so for the next one, let's use our wedge for this one. So with your wedge, you just are using it as a little bit of a prop so that when we put our legs in the air in a tabletop-ish position. So this is tabletop. Typical Pilates means that your knees are at 90 degrees in tabletop. I don't really want 90 degrees. I would like your knees to fall to wherever is comfortable on them, but I want the leg to be vertical. And as you're here, cock your toes up towards your face so that they're not hanging there on your legs. And so now the wedge is there just to protect the small curve in your back. Make sure that you're not flattening your back or jamming it under there to hold your hips up. We want to just feel where's a comfortable position to let our hips rest to vertical without putting strain in our back or flattening it out. And so now that we know the right position, we're going to add an alternating leg length into a coming back up. So as we lengthen the leg, we send it long. As we come back up, we bring it up. If you can't bring your leg that low without your back pulling in, then you're going to go straight up here. But the goal is still going to be that we lengthen the knee. And if any of that still bothers you, you can always bring your feet back down to the ground and do alternating leg slides instead of floating them. But the key is you want to feel your abs working here, not your back. So let's go ahead and float your legs into that nice comfortable tabletop position with your toes cocked up. Arms are straight up ahead of you towards the ceiling. And now send one leg long as your arms float overhead, and then bring everything back up to tall. And then we send everything long again, and then we bring it up to tall. So we're sending the length through the middle of our knee while we keep our ribs engaged and tight with those abdominal muscles, not letting our boobs get pulled up towards the ceiling as all those limbs move. It's really hard to keep those ribs anchored to the floor here, so focus on what works well for you. If you need a couch underneath. And so we're going to do some baby rolling, and on this one you can use a wedge, but you can also do it without. The main thing is on this one, and I'm going to give it a quick demo, you're rolling to one side without your top leg falling onto the other one. You're always trying to imagine that you've got polar magnets that are trying to push away from each other. So we never want them to get closer together. So when we come into this position with one arm at a 45-degree angle down on the ground and the other arm up to the sky with the shoulder on the ground, we're going to just roll on to our side without letting our knees come anywhere closer together. And then we're going to slowly roll onto our back again. And what I want you to feel is that the shoulders and the hips stay square with each other. We don't want the hips rolling in ahead of the shoulders or vice versa. We want to imagine that our belly is as tight as a drum, our chest is nice and open and connected to our belly, and we're just trying to roll as slow as we can without letting any drift of our knees come together. And now let's switch and do the other side for a few. Opposite arm up, other arm down on the ground. Float your feet up into a nice comfortable tabletop with the feet cocked and the feet low. And now make that turn, imagining that that top knee, as you're rolling onto your side, is trying to stay away from the bottom knee. It cannot get any closer. And you should start to feel how your posture acts as a unit here. You can start feeling how things kind of connect. And that's a whole part of what we're trying to do with these workouts. Get our core and our posture activated so that as we go on about our day, we're not having our more destructive muscles pulling us into positions we shouldn't be in. All right, so let your legs come down and rest. We're going to do another one here. And for this one, I want you to, I want you to do one more, and if you can't do this next one, then stick with what we just did, okay? This next one's a progression from the one that we just did. And so we're gonna go up onto our elbow and then come back down onto our side for those of you who are familiar. But if you've never done this before, we're gonna start in the same position we were a second ago, and we're just gonna add on to it a little bit. So just listen to me more than you have to look. And if you can't figure it out by listening, then go back to it later and try it once you've seen it. And so with this one, we want the same position of setup. We're going to roll all the way to that side, just like we did before, nice and slow. And then our bottom leg is going to lengthen just a little bit as we push out of our elbow. If you need to adjust that elbow a little bit to make sure that you're pushing your chest away from the ground and we're keeping our knees, again, polar opposites. We never want them together. And now as we come down, we can bring our elbow in a little bit so we can find our way to our side, and then we roll slow onto our back. So I don't want you to try and come from the top position straight to the bottom position. You have to find the side first. And so again, let's go ahead and make that roll. If I were to lift your arm up, make sure I could not lift it off the ground. There's energy driving through that elbow to push off the ground. And as you're here, you're holding those knees loose and wide away from each other as you push your chest as far away from that floor as you can. And then slide the elbow in as you push your shoulder away from your ear as you go to your side. And then slowly with your knees apart, come back to the middle. And now let's try that on the other side. And as we go to the other side, just again, remember, we're doing everything in opposition, and we're gentle and we're non-judgmental. If anything isn't feeling right, don't think that something's wrong. Just realize that we need to work on something, and that's either communicated by me or by practicing it with you. So let's go ahead and float your feet to your nice comfortable tabletop. Other arm down, opposite arm up towards the sky. Roll all the way nice and slow with that top knee wide, and then push the bottom leg long a little bit as you really push your chest away from your floor. And then as you come down, you're bringing that elbow in to push your shoulder away from your ear, keeping the knees away from each other as you roll. And now let's go 2 more of those as slow as you can. No momentum here, guys. It's really easy. Even on the pushing up, don't use too much momentum. We want to use those abs to push from the elbow, and then push the elbow down as you drive the shoulder away from the ear, coming back down to your back. Let's give me 1 more, guys. Roll to the side, keeping those knees wide. Use the elbow to push that bottom knee a little straighter. And now as we come back down, we bend the knee as we come back into the center and come back to our back. All right, so for the next section, we're gonna do a little bit of stretching, and I timed that perfectly because I saw Burley coming. So if nobody's met Burley, sorry, Burley likes to make a cameo in all of these appearances at some point. Hopefully he won't be too much of a distraction. But our next one, what we're gonna do is a little bit of a front hip stretch, okay? So with the front hip stretch, what I want you to do is you to get into a position with 1 knee on the floor or on a block and 1 leg in front. So, excuse me, Burley. If you're gonna use a block, then you're gonna put that knee on your block and you're gonna step the other foot forward. This is probably more comfortable for someone who maybe has some knee issues or some hip mobility issues. But we could also do this without that big block, just on our knee and our other foot forward. Now, I'm going to show you the angle from the front because it's pretty important here that we're not like this when we're stretching here. We want to be in a bit of a wide stance, meaning excuse me, Burley, if my legs were down, they'd be forming an A position. As I come back up, I want to maintain that even space between my knees and my pubic bone. And so now, all I want you to do here, a lot of people overstretch this one, and what they end up doing is they end up trying to go into this to get the stretch. We don't have to do that, guys. What we want to do is find the best stretch from the least amount of lean. And so from that, all I want you to do is just make sure your hips and shoulders are square to the middle. And now what I want you to do is just drive that down knee into the ground. Think about lengthening and trying to push that knee into the floor. I know you can feel a stretch come through this area. And so just by driving that knee down into the ground as much as we can get a great stretch. So we don't need to go into something that's not quite functional and not quite something that we're going to do much in our day to get into. We want to stretch it through a very normal position to us. And yes, you may not be on your knees too much, but it's normal in the respect that we stand all day long. So that's a normal. We're not like this during our day that much. All right, so let's go ahead and do the other side. Excuse me, Burley. But Bob, it's my hour. So switch legs, same thing, have a little bit of width between your legs, and with no lean forward, I want you to drive that knee down into the floor without shifting your weight over the kneecap. Think about your posture a little bit. We want our ribs anchored down, we want our shoulders anchored down, we want the back of our neck nice and long. almost feeling like a bobblehead, but no jammed in tension. Nobody likes to look at ourselves with a chin tuck. We just want to think about gently dropping it down as we find the length in our neck. And drive that knee into the floor for 3, 2, 1, and go ahead and relax. And so I think we've got a couple more minutes, and hopefully it won't cut us off on this one. But I want you to do a little bit of foot rolling. And everybody's got different tools. If you have a lacrosse ball, you can use a lacrosse ball. If you have a MYT-ROLLER, you can use the wooden dowel or the wooden ball at the end of your MYT-ROLLER. But we're going to find the front of your foot with whatever you're using. And I'm going to show you with the MYT-ROLL first, and then on the other foot I'll show you on the lacrosse ball. And so again, you're just trying to put pressure onto the foot that's on the MYT-ROLLER, and then relax off of it and find another spot, and then relax your weight on a straight leg onto it each time. Go ahead and let's switch to the other side. And as I show you on the maybe I do, maybe I don't. Burley doesn't want you to see the roller. If you're using the lacrosse ball, I always want to make sure that your heel stays on the ground during this, guys. Okay, so we want to have some part of your foot comfortably touching the ground at all times. We don't want to be rolling, excuse me, we don't want to be rolling our foot around. This is a hunt and destroy, seek and destroy mission that we're trying to find any of those sensitive places in our feet, and we're trying to release them out. So let's go ahead and now switch feet, and we're going to do the back of your heel. And so I want you to act like you're in a pair of heels, a pair of pumps, very light pumps. They don't have to be really high heels, just little heels. And now I want you to put the leg that's not on the ball slightly forward, so you can decide how much weight you want to put onto that ball under your heel. And every time you release and rest on it, I want the leg straight, and I want the hip forward, and I want the body trying to remember it's trying to release tension. Don't ever do something holding tension in it, or it becomes very difficult. Burley's all about holding tension right now. All right, so let's go ahead and switch to the other foot for our last little bit. And same thing, start up in both legs like you're in a set of heels, and then decide how much weight you want to put onto that back heel. Shift your weight forward to the front, and then decide how much weight you want to put onto that next location on the ball. And just by keeping your ball in a seek and destroy mission, it's going to allow you to get more release in the tension and the fascia that goes through your feet. So let's just press on it one more time. And then as we take those off the ground and we assess the way that our feet and our body feel after the workout, hopefully you can see and feel that it was worth the hour. And like I said, if you don't always have an hour, I'll start doing some shorter ones soon, but we've got the Instagram TV, so if you ever do need a big long one, they'll be there for a while too. But enjoy, have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week. All right, bye-bye.